think that's a good place to kind of transition into our final topic of the night, which is James's topic.
Yeah. So my topic is cinematic video games, and I may be a couple of years behind in bringing up Metal Gear Solid 4, but I'm gonna do it anyway now that Metal Gear Solid 5 just came out, and I have not heard anything bad about Metal Gear Solid 5, mostly, but nothing about being too cinematic. Unlike how 4 was, like, just reamed for being too cinematic.
Ben has a limited edition
like a 90-minute
ending. Yes.
Ending? Okay.
Yes. And there was like 2 or 3 like secret endings, which was just means you kept watching through the credits. I never played the game, but I did watch my brother play it, and I did watch him beat it, and I did watch the ending. And while the ending made 0 sense to me, having never played anything except like half of 1 when it came out when I was a kid, I will say that I kept looking at my watch being like, is this still going? And I was like, well, yeah, this is like real fan service stuff for people who are really paying attention to the plot through all these games that don't like matter much to this game. I'm like, huh. Seems like they probably should have alluded to that, but whatever. Anyway, so my question is, do you all think this is good or bad in video games in general? Like, is being too cinematic a good or bad thing? I guess I think for our level, like our area, our genre of enjoyment, I would bring up the Halo games. When Halo 1,
that's a healthy.
Yeah, Halo 1 was hardly cinematic at all. In fact, really the only real cinematic part of that game, besides the ending, was when the Master Chief finds the found footage of the squad that found the flood.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, it's just like the end of the level and the beginning of the level. That's it. And then Halo 2 got a bit more with what's that thing called? The big tentacle monster.
Keys. Oh, the Gravemind.
Yes, with Gravemind. And then 3 got more over the top with the Arbiter and all sorts of stuff like that.
Arbiter was in 2.
Well, yeah, but like Arbiter and the Chief, like the stuff with them together in the 3rd one was like the game got much more and more cinematic. And on one hand,
I just want to throw in there, I know you haven't played it, the anniversary editions of Halo 1 and 2, they redid all of the cinematics, and beautiful. With Halo 2, they added cinematics to tie into Halo 5, which was
that's cool.
So freaking cool.
I like that. That's neat.
So here's my question, and as someone who hasn't paid a ton of attention to Halo games, I haven't actually finished 4 yet, and I
just finished.
Recall 1 through 3 as well.
I don't have an Xbone, so I can't play it.
But okay, so here's my question: how much of that do you think exists purely to support this like extended universe that Halo has? Because they do have like books, right?
Yeah, well, they had books. They had books before 4.
Yeah. So like,
really good. The Fall of Reach was so good.
So how much of it do you think is like trying to kind of grow the interest in the expanded plot of the game or the universe? I think introducing these cinematics.
Again, having never played anything other than 3 and ODST, I played Reach. I don't think it's to get people interested in the expanded universe. I think it's, hey, we have this expanded universe that is fantastic. Let's take good elements and tie those into the games, because the fans who are all about it will love it, and the fans who don't will feel the depth of where it's coming from.
And I mean, to James's point, and to kind of answer Sam's question, the allusions to the extended universe didn't come until 2 and 3. I mean, Halo 1, they barely alluded to anything.
Right.
And the books came out, and it was the books that was kind of alluding to things in the game, where it would try to kind of describe things in different ways that made it be like, oh, okay, so that was that part of the game. And then the more you read, the more you were like, gosh, I wish they incorporated this into the game. And I feel like 2 then started incorporating it, seemed more like fan service because of how popular the extended universe became.
Okay, so you're saying it's more chicken and the egg, because you're making the exact point, right? Because James is saying it got more cinematic, and then you're saying the expanded universe got more in depth.
I am saying So I'm saying the game became more cinematic to appease the people that loved the extended universe.
Yeah.
But at the
Okay.
same time, it's
So
also
to answer
making
my question, yes.
yeah. Well, I'm not.
So
Just
back to my
elaborating.
initial question: do you guys think this is good or bad? Sam,
Why would it be
Um,
bad?
no.
I'll get
Okay,
into that.
so I'm gonna give the example, and I haven't played the game, but I've heard horrible things about it. And it's the limited edition copy that's sitting somewhere in Ben's house right now of order whatever,
Great example.
1886.
Great
1886.
example.
Yeah, and every reviewer, every friend who's played it has basically been like, this is a good like 5 hours of gameplay and the rest is movie. Um, so in that sense, no. I think that the extremes in the case are always bad, but like, I'll say the thing that I've always liked from a cinematic standpoint, and I don't know at what level this bridges is has been the like the Gears of War games, because I feel like there's enough plot that I care about, and I care about these characters that needs to be extended in some sort of cinematic. I get some of the plot from walking around interacting with things, but I get the rest of it from watching the scenes, and I feel like that adds to the game.
Mhm.
Like, and it adds to the game in a way that isn't like, when you load up in a game and you're like, oh, and I think my best example of this was the Metroid games for Wii when they first came out. It would be like, here, grab this door and twist, and like that action would trigger a sequence or trigger a specific event to happen, and it was just so forced that if they had just provided that plot in a cinematic, I would have been fine with it and not had to push buttons in the game for pushing buttons' sake.
Okay. Ben?
So I think there's plenty in both camps. Like there are still plenty of games like Vanilla Destiny that was not very cinematic at all. That I still had a blast playing. But there are games, and there have been games for the last two generations of consoles that have been purely based on cinematics. I mean, look at Heavy Rain, for example. I mean, you are essentially just guiding a person through a movie.
Mhm.
I mean, there's not a whole. I mean, there's a lot of interaction in the game, but there's not a whole lot of. It's not the same kind of interaction that you would normally get in game. And more recently, Until Dawn, which
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
I've had a chance to play a little bit of, and I've watched a lot of streams of, and that's I really like the game.
Mhm.
I mean, it's an interactive movie,
Mhm.
and I do really enjoy it. Would I want every single game to be like that? Absolutely not.
But in the
But
same vein, you don't want every game you ever played to always be a first person shooter.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So I think for me, as I was thinking about this and getting ready for the cast, it boiled down to, there are games that do it well and games that do it poorly, and the games that do it well, it's because they know the game knows what it wants to be. Halo 2 knew what it wanted to be.
Yeah.
Halo knew what it wanted to be. Metal Gear Solid 4 didn't. Like, it wanted to, it was supposed to be the last Metal Gear Solid game. It wanted to tie in all these plot elements and do all these things and make it really feel like you were the hero of this epic story. But you don't feel like the hero of an epic story when you watch everything happen. You get the feeling by doing. And
Yeah, but isn't that how Metal Gear Solid games have been? I mean, Metal Gear Solid, I feel like they knew exactly what it wanted to be. It was
the first one, absolutely.
no, even Metal Gear Solid 4.
I mean, I think that's
Everything that I
the
have
biggest.
I don't know.
seen regarding Metal Gear Solid, they have stayed true to Metal Gear from the very beginning to now.
I agree with that, but the previous Metal Gear Solid games were not nearly as cinematic as the fourth one was, which I think caused the divide.
But the technology was so different.
Sure, but I don't know. I get what you're saying. I don't know how to word what I'm feeling about what you're saying. Like, I'm not saying that Metal Gear Solid 4 is a bad game, because it didn't know what it wanted to be. It didn't know what it wanted to be in the sense of how to implement the cinematics. And the cinematics were beautiful, but there were times when I watch it being played where I'm like, that was really cool. That it seems like Snake almost died because he nearly got blown up. And while the cinematic was beautiful, I would have preferred to have like escaped under the explosions on my own. You know, so
Yeah,
for the most part, I like.
You're talking about the difference between preference and intent. I mean, the game wanted to do it that way, so it did it that way.
Then I think maybe using the term knowing what it wanted to be was a bad choice, but like you get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I think it's probably not super fair to pick on Metal Gear just because I feel like Kojima's known for this sort of thing, and that's like why people like or don't like him, and that's where his departure from Konami in this last year, like a lot of that driving factor was how 5 was being kind of crafted and done.
Let me real quick, James. I think your argument was better with the Order 1886 because that game is. They probably knew what they wanted to be, but they didn't tell people what they wanted it to be.
Fair.
They marketed that game as this
a big action.
Exactly, a big action heavy. Control your game going through. If they had marketed it as more of a cinematic game, it probably would not have been so, widely panned,
right?
At release. Because, the people that would have liked that kind of stuff would have gone to play it. Whereas instead, we had people that didn't necessarily know anything about that specific kind of genre going in and saying, "Oh, this isn't what I wanted to play. This is dumb. This is not the game I was expecting." And
right,
they're right. It wasn't the game that people were expecting because we weren't told what to expect.
Yeah. So I had a train of thought. Oh well, I'll jump to what up. So I know we're running short in time, so I want to give this one last example. For why cinematic isn't needed most of the time, but it's not by all means bad to have. I think back to Super Nintendo days, and I think back to my favorite RPGs, like Final Fantasy VI, like Chrono Trigger. There's no cutscenes that suddenly change the graphics and make it look beautiful. You do have scenes where you're watching what's going on, and you're seeing things like that. But it allows your imagination to fill in the gaps. When you're imagining the story going on, you don't actually imagine these guys in your head being little sprites, but imagine them as full people having these conversations. You make up the voices in your head. So in that sense, no, you don't need cinematics. But if the technology was around back then, better believe they would have been using it.
But people wanted cinematics then, James. I mean, it's like reading a book and saying, "Oh my gosh, this book would have been great on screen." I would love to see this. Like, I have this image in my head, but I want to actually see it. I want to feel it. That's what made, Harry Potter such a big thing.
But here's my counter argument to that. Well, finish your thought. Finish your thought. I don't get my counter.
That's one of the things that made Harry Potter such a big thing. It's like people were finally able to see what they imagined on screen, and they did it so wonderfully that people were like, "Oh my God, this is exactly how I pictured it in my head," or "Oh wow, I don't think I ever understood it in that way," or "Oh, Hermione is how you say it. I always said it as Hermione," or so
pronunciation
things like that.
Key.
Yeah, pronunciation is key.
So my counter to that,
I think. Hold on one second. I think games like Legend of Zelda, they wanted to make a cinematic game, but they couldn't. So instead, they told the story through text and conversations. I believe if they could have told the story with the cinematics, it would have been a very cinematic-heavy game.
Okay, that's a great point.
And they've gotten more and more that way over time. Go ahead with your point. I'm sorry.
My counter with the whole books and wanting to translate the movies so you can see it visualized on screen. The problem with that is when you are reading a book or when you are playing a sprite game or low res, anything like that, where things aren't completely given to you and this is what this is, you imagine it in your head any way you want it. Yeah. When you sit down and watch it as a movie or show or something like that, You are seeing the world interpreted by the people who made it, and that's the only way you're going to see it. Which can be good in the case of Harry Potter. It can be really bad in the case of Aragon and stuff like that. So I'm not saying cinematics are bad, but you better believe they can be. And so
absolutely.
So it's So I guess I should have established that I don't have a complete yes or no on whether or not cinematics are good. They can be, and like any other art form, when they're done well, they can blow you away. And being somebody who's very much a fan of the visual novel game genre, like 999 or Danganronpa.
Dragon Roomba?
Danganronpa.
Dragon Roomba.
Okay.
So James, did you ever play like Chrono Trigger or any of the other games when they remade them for PlayStation? Because I believe the only thing they did was add cinematics.
Among a few other things, but
like
that was kind of the big thing, is the cinematics and what they added in. I thought it was neat, but I didn't feel like the game became so much more because of it.
Yeah. So I think the most interesting thing that I'm thinking about now I know we're almost at time, so is I'm really, really, really curious to see what's going to happen with Final Fantasy VII and the remake.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't
because I think everyone's been clamoring for a remake, myself included. I was so excited, but I think probably like a week or two in, people had like written all these articles that were like, man, how are some of these scenes going to look now? Because you could actually have real full video versions of it, like
and you're thinking of the cross-dressing scene, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean that was a highlight that all of the articles brought up.
And one of the things that made that so fun was the very polygon blocky graphics look of it all. It added to the silliness. And I think that's the thing I really hope that this remake doesn't miss, is the silliness that Final Fantasy VII really did bring to the table. Because that can get lost in the dark, gritty atmosphere of the high resolution, engine.
Yeah, especially because Final Fantasy did have cinematics.
Yeah.
So it's not like we didn't have a visual of what they look like. So I guess the question is, what's overboard and what's not? So I'm excited to see how they.
I can't wait to finally like a Final Fantasy game.
Ben, I think you'll love 15 when it comes out.
Okay.
One last thing with when I want to talk about Final Fantasy VII. I remember I was playing as a kid, and you get your first real cinematic when you're escaping from Shinra.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like,
yes.
Holy shit, what is going on? Like, this is so cool. They changed the graphics and everything to me, like, look actual 3D-esque, not the blocky stuff that the rest of the game was. And yeah, the fact that they turned it cinematic was mind-blowing to young James.
Yeah. Especially the music in that game. Like, the first time
we could talk about music for also another entire full topic.
Topic for another day.
I feel like we need to wrap things up. I want to